Thank you all so much for coming. I'm calling this press conference to wrap up probably the most spectacular 10 days that the city has had in its history, and one of the probably most spectacular runs that any city in America has had in terms of hosting the number of major events that the city of New Orleans successfully hosted since New Year's Eve. It's just incredible. We had an unprecedented lineup of world-class events that just really helped the city of New Orleans shine. I think the people of the city had a great opportunity to tell a story to the rest of the nation, and I have to say that I'm so proud of the people of the city for the incredible amount of work that they have done, and the individuals behind me and so many others that helped make this a success. Just to highlight some of it, we've had a number of Saints games, as you know, a number of Hornets games. We hosted the New Orleans Bowl, we hosted the Sugar Bowl, we hosted the BCS Championship, and of course we hosted one of the best New Year's Eve parties that anybody has seen in a long time in this city and really across America. We've had over 300,000 visitors that have moved in and out of the city during that period of time. The estimated economic impact exceeds $500 million, which is just amazing for a city that not long ago was left for dead by so many people in the United States of America. It was a great testament to the resilience of the people of the city that we were not only able to create events that produced this much economic impact, but we were able to host these events and get so much free positive publicity. For those of you that were able to watch the national networks, they really treated the city very, very well. And the city and its people just look spectacular. Anecdotal evidence from passengers that came in and visitors that the people of New Orleans, and of course we know this already, are the nicest people that they ever met. And they love the city of New Orleans. I heard that so many, many times, and it made me so proud. Over the 10-day period, we peaked at nearly 99% occupancy rates in the hotels. At the airport, we had 150 daily departures. I'll give you a fun fact for those people in New Orleans who can only count with food. But Dragos served more than 3,400 dozens of charbroiled oysters between Saturday and Monday. That is a world record. We have reports that many of our restaurants were actually turning people away, which is a welcome problem to have. So I just wanted to thank all of the people that had anything to do with this effort, all of the public safety officials. Sometimes we don't recognize the back of the house side of what we do. People see the front of the house side. They see the football teams on the field. They see all of that stuff. But behind the scenes are thousands and thousands and thousands of employees that work for private companies, that work for the public sector, that actually work around the clock planning for these events, which took us pretty much the entire year to do, but also stay up all night and clean up so that the city is clean the next day. Many of you will recall, as I remind you, that we hosted one of the best New Year's Eve day parties that we had, but we had a Saints game the next day. And we had to kind of shoot people out of the way who didn't want to go to bed so that we could clean up the city of New Orleans. And it was spotless the next day when we had the Saints game. Likewise, after the other night, when people started drinking their sorrows away on Bourbon Street, if you're an LSU fan, or having a great time if you're an Alabama fan, the city was clean the next morning when people got up to go to work. And that is much a tribute to all of our folks that are standing behind us that literally did not go to bed for 10 days, and all of the public employees for Park and Parkways and sanitation, emergency medical services that did all of that incredible amount of work. I also want to acknowledge the incredible work of the police department. As you know, the police presence was robust on the streets of the city, beginning with New Year's Eve all the way through the event. We had 740 police officers on the streets. We also had all of the areas of the city that were covered. I think the police did a masterful job. And, Chief, I want to thank you for the work that you guys have done in partnership with the state police that had 40 to 50 troopers here. Also, Sheriff Newell Norman had a number of people from Jefferson Parish here, and Sheriff Marlon Guzman was a great assistance. And I think that folks will recognize that we had one of the safest runs that we've had in a very long period of time. And that's not something that goes without a tremendous amount of work. I also hope that you've noticed the new visibility vest that the police officers have so that people know exactly where they are, and they did a superb job. As we look ahead, I think it is really important to understand, and this is why I put this board up for you. When the national press interviewed me, they said, man, this must be wonderful as the culmination of what the city has been working through. And I had to pleasantly remind them that not only is this not the culmination, this is really just the first quarter of one of the longest runs that this city is going to have. So if you look at this board that we put up for you, I want you to just show you that the New Orleans Bowl was the beginning, but we really are in the very early phases of a very long run that will not end until we get to the Super Bowl of 2013, and then we'll, make it back into our regular rotation. But we're going to have 14 or 15 major sporting events that come with us that are going to include the SEC men's basketball tournament. We're going to have the men's Final Four. Navy Week and the Tall Ships will be here, which is an international event. This has only gone to a couple of cities in America, and they'll be in the city of New Orleans. Of course, then we're going to roll into Jazz Fest. We have Essence Fest. We have the Bayou Classic. We have Voodoo Fest. Then we go into the fall events that we normally have. Interspersed in all of that will probably be in excess of 100 conventions that will be in the city between now and then. And so as we think about what the city of New Orleans is, that I think sometimes the people, in America take for granted, and certainly the people of New Orleans, this takes a massive amount of work and effort. And I just want to end it by thanking the people of the city for, number one, being patient, number two, really working hard together, number three, really being great hosts, because people from all over the country, the one thing they always comment on first is how wonderful the people of New Orleans are, and the people of this city are the greatest ambassadors for the city of New Orleans, and they themselves did a spectacular job. So with that, it was a very successful wrap-up. We're very thankful and grateful, and we're very humbled by the fact that the rest of America really has given us the chance to help ourselves stand back up and to, again, show the country what resilience really, really looks like, what it really means to kind of pick yourself up off the ground and not only get back to doing a little bit, but to actually being the best at what we've just done this week. So thank everybody for that. And now I'd like to call the chief up for a couple of comments, to be followed by Michelle Thomas, who is our deputy mayor for operations that helped run a lot of these operations, Mark Romig, who has been a great leader in the tourism industry for the city of New Orleans. Chief.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no question in my mind that once again the New Orleans Police Department demonstrated that there is no department in the world that can handle a crowd better than the New Orleans Police Department. Our officers did a phenomenal job, backed up by a great city. The people of New Orleans make this city run and make this tourism business what it is, and I'm so grateful to be part of that. This has been a long run for us. It actually started with the Bayou Classic with our new deployment plan, and it went all the way through to the BCS, and we believe we're hitting a good stride. One of the key pieces of the new deployment plan that we think is very important is the fundamental change is that we're not using our precious overtime to staff extra officers during the tourist peaks. We're actually using our on-duty officers to do that so we can keep that overtime to manage our crime-fighting plan throughout the year. It's important that the people of New Orleans also know that the first thing we do in the new deployment strategy is fill up all the neighborhood patrols. Then we move everybody else into the downtown core, and certainly the assistance of the state police, Sheriff Guzman and Sheriff Norman, was incredibly helpful to us. Let me give you a couple numbers of the things that we thought were important. During the 10-day period, we arrested and cited 85 underage drinking violations of teenagers who were drinking alcohol in the city of New Orleans, and we arrested 50 curfew violators. Now, those numbers are important to me because they're not that large if you think about it, because we were out there aggressively looking for these things. We were looking for curfew violators every day. We had 10 to 20 officers who their entire assignment was to look for curfew violators, and we found about 50 over 10 days, which I think is positive. The underage drinking issue, if you're under 21 and you're drinking, we were given citations, and we gave 85 of those out. And again, we were looking aggressively for this. So hopefully the messaging that we've been doing through the most recent action of the council passing the curfew ordinance and through our continued response to the community that underage drinking is a problem that we all need to confront as a family and then as a government, that the message might be getting out, and we're pretty excited about that. At the end of the day, I could not be more proud of the men and women of the police department who stepped up. They did the job that they do better than anybody in the world, and that's manage an incredibly large crowd, hundreds of thousands of people, with a force of about 1,200 cops. I take my hat off to them. They did a great job. Thank you.
They did do a great job, Chief. And it was a concerted effort. There were many partners that came to the table throughout the 10 days of these events. I'd like to say thanks to several of our partners that helped with the cleanup operations, the French Market Corporation, the Downtown Development District, certainly the Department of Sanitation, the Department of Parks and Parkways, Code Enforcement, Property Management, and the Equipment Maintenance Division in Homeland Security were all active participants throughout the day, 24 hours a day for the 10-day period, working to make sure that everyone had a pleasant time, that they didn't have to step over a lot of garbage, that there were plenty of litter cans and waste receptacles dispersed throughout the downtown district and in the French Quarter. We worked with the business owners, and we'd like to give thanks to all of the business owners, the restaurateurs, the bar owners who were helpful to us in the cleanup effort. And we tried some new things this time. They worked well. We expect to build on those things as we continue to move through with the many events that we have leading up to the Super Bowl in 2013. And we look forward to even greater success. Throughout this 10-day period, the city collected more than 60,000 pounds of waste, and we had the city Mitch clean and lemony fresh by 7 a.m. each morning. Look forward to doing more of that.
Thank you. I do want to stress the teamwork that occurred throughout the industry, the hospitality industry, working with the Louisiana Restaurant Association, the Greater New Orleans Hotel Lodging Association, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, French Quarter Business Association, and the Bourbon Street Merchants. We were able to communicate on a regular basis about the trash pickup schedules, what the issue was with taxi service and the special event rates. We got word out through the CVB to the visitors coming in about parking and how they should drive their vehicles and be careful about not overloading the streets with too many cars, if they could carpool, and we think that message got out, and the traffic situation was handled, we think, very well. And it was just the teamwork of the entire industry coming together, because that's what's going to make it work the right way for not only the visitors but the citizens as we move into this very busy next several months as we head into the Super Bowl and the Women's Final Four in March of next year. I do want to stress the importance that we put on the marketing that occurs during this period. We want people who are first-time visitors to New Orleans to see a great experience happen, to visit a good city, a clean city, and then make that decision to come back. So when you see things like on ESPN, when they do this basic love letter to the city, when you see a great story in the New York Times about this being the capital of sports, that's going to influence somebody to make a decision who is not here yet to come visit later on this year when we would like to see them come back. So all in all, great teamwork with everybody, and we want to thank the mayor and the police department and all the city departments for what they did to put the best foot forward, not only the red carpet but the clean carpet, so that people decide that New Orleans is the best place to visit. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I'll be happy to answer questions, but before I do that, you know, the deputy mayors, Andy, I see standing behind me, and Cedric, Michelle, all of them, you know, really work hard to coordinate not only the city agencies but all of our partners. You see this list here, and we're preparing already for the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl is the biggest event that we're going to have, but a couple of small events equal a Super Bowl, so we're going to have a bunch of them between now and then. I'm going to be calling on the citizens of New Orleans, the businesses that are here, everybody that is in what I now term the hospitality zone, all the way from the airport, to be thinking about ways that we can really present ourselves even better than we did this last time for when the Super Bowl comes. And it's not too early. We've already been planning for it. We'll continue to do that. We'll take the lessons that we learned from this, some good ones and some bad ones, and we'll get better at it. And you know, I really do think that it's not easy to do these major events. We have a protocol for getting them done. This very tight run of these major events has really caused us to focus like a laser beam on getting ourselves ready. The people of New Orleans should recall and should be very proud of the fact that we hosted the first Super Bowl after September 11th, when new security measures that the world had never seen actually took place, and we did it effortlessly. So we really feel good about our ability, but we want to show our best selves again. So with that, and Chief, also the fire department, who we neglected to mention a little bit earlier, who helped cover not only downtown area but the rest of the city as well, did a superb job, as well as all of our other partners up here. So with that, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. And if y'all have any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer them. No, I won't wear your hat. Go ahead, Nancy.
No, it sounds like everything went perfectly well. I mean, from the outset. Is there what were the major challenges, if any? I mean, because it seems like with all those people in town, you guys.
Well, you know, first of all, it did not go perfectly. It went about as well as you can expect it to. There are always some hiccups in it, so I don't want to claim that it went perfectly, but it went really, really well. But the major challenges are coordination. So they're mundane and they're boring. But for example, we really worry about traffic, and we worry about traffic patterns and backup, and are there any hiccups. So we worked a lot about designing traffic patterns that we thought worked. It would be interesting if the citizens thought that it didn't work to kind of let us know, but we know one of the choke points, for example, was on Tchoupitoulas, the Tchoupitoulas exit down by the convention center, because at that particular point, for people who are paying attention, on a particular day, we had a cruise ship that had actually come into the city on the day of a major event, and we had the port that was open, so the trucks were moving. So the chief had to put a package of 8 police officers there to make sure that that flowed. And the reason why that was important is because if you don't get that choke point right, for ladies who go to the jury show, you know that the lines go all the way back to Bonneville. Logistical issues like that are really complicated that we have to make sure that we know about. In the French Quarter, for example, during the French Quarter Festival, if the traffic patterns are not right, people can start running into each other, and then it backs up the rest of the city. That's always the most challenging problem. Coordination on security matters is always a logistical problem. So in this particular event, when ones rise to a certain level, which the BCS Championship did and the Super Bowl did, it's a federal event. So we have to make sure that we partner with the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, and make sure that the city is secure. And we did that for those events, and we'll do it again for the Super Bowl. And then again, we have to make sure that, for example, our private sector partners are doing the right thing. Something as simple as a concierge unloading a car in the second lane on Camp Street will back up traffic all the way onto Poydras Street. And then making sure that when we have too many pedestrians in the street that we can actually communicate with everybody and turning into a pedestrian mall. Those kinds of mundane logistical things that the public never sees basically results in the city of New Orleans feel like a very walkable, safe place, but you have people, again, working the back of the house side of this, and that just takes a lot of coordination, a lot of communication.
And, we've had our share of publicity as the murder capital and this sort of thing. So do these successes not necessarily cancel that out, but help a lot in kind of putting a tourniquet on?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. And so I'll say this again, and I'll continue to say it because I won't get tired of it, that we have a murder rate in this city that's 10 times the national average. There are murders all across America, and every one of them all over America, and this issue is unnatural, it's unacceptable, and it has to change. That is a separate and distinct issue for whether a city is safe or not as it relates to violent crime. There are 2 separate statistics. They, in New Orleans, happen to be both not the same, but they both occur at the same time. I've spoken a tremendous amount about murder in New Orleans, and we will continue to do that. So you saw Save Our Sons. You saw the initiative with Ceasefire. Last week we did Midnight Basketball. We're going to do a whole host of initiatives and focus specifically on that. But on the violent crime piece, New Orleans is number 73. Now, any amount of crime is unacceptable, but when you compare us with competitors in the economic development sphere, not the public safety sphere, we do better than every major city in America on how safe the city is for people that come in and visit. Every now and then you will have the convergence of the two, which we saw on Halloween night. I think the public can separate the two, and I think if we can continue to do that as well. You see instances, for example, there was a shooting the other day outside of a high school, but it didn't have anything specific to do with the high school. It was the same iteration on the murder rate as 2 young people who were mad at each other that happened to do it at that one point in time. We believe that we understand them both to the extent that you can. We deal with them separately, but I think that you have to acknowledge that we had a fairly safe run with 300,000 people in the city and protected them as well as any city in America can do. And not only did we do it just this week as though it was an exception, we do it all the time. And we have done it better than anybody in the country since September 11th. So I think it sends a very positive message, number one, on that issue. The other thing is, and I don't want to understate this, as Mark Romegate said, I used to travel around the country and people would say things like, is Shreveport still underwater? And the reason they did that was because on Fox and ESPN and all the national news, every time they talked about Katrina, even though we were 6 years later, they would show pictures of the city being underwater. You can't overstate how important it is that every picture that came out of New Orleans really for the last year has been spectacular stuff. Beautiful pictures of the city, beautiful pictures of the river, beautiful pictures of the fun that people are having. So when people in America think about New Orleans, they think that's a place not only where you can have fun, but is really, really great at doing major events. And that is universally positive, not only in terms of other sporting events coming, but individuals who are thinking about moving businesses here. And so it was a huge success that took a tremendous amount of work, and the citizens should really be proud of how great they looked and their city looked during that brief period of time.
Just two things. After the game, I talked to a lot of mostly Bama fans that were trying to catch a cab. I don't know if this is true. I just went over and talked to the cab driver, and he said that the police were keeping them back. And I was just, it seemed like there was a lot of, there was elderly Bama fans and families. Just the taxi situation, at least immediately after the game, might not have worked. And I just wanted to get y'all's
Sure.
thoughts if you've heard anything on that.
No. The taxi situation in the quarter is really simple. When we do the exterior closure, which is Rampart and Canal and Esplanade, and Canals and Bourbon Street can still be crossed, we let taxi cabs come in.
This was outside the Superdome, though.
All right, outside the Superdome, as we were exiting and clearing out the Superdome, there was no infringement of the taxis. We just don't do that, so I'm very sorry that the fans had that experience, but chances are the taxi cab driver said something that wasn't completely accurate, because we have no policy and no practice that limits the taxi cabs to go anywhere in the city unless Bourbon Street is impassable. Then we don't want anybody to cross Bourbon Street.
Is there a place where people should have gone to catch a taxi, like outside of the Superdome?
It's a good thing for us to be thinking about. One of the things that occurred on Monday that came very fast was the Poydras Street becoming essentially a pedestrian mall. So we'll look back at our plans and we'll make sure we take a good look at those issues. And taxi cab's another issue. And Malachi, who works for the city's taxi cab bureau, we'll certainly talk with him as well.
Can I speak to that issue? First of all, thank you for telling us about that. Those are the kind of things I want to hear. Those are the kind of things that you ask me, well, what didn't go well? We have our plans, and then the execution. They're not always completely integrated, and to the extent that it didn't work for anybody, they should call in and let us know. One of the reasons why taxi cabs may not have been out there is because if people bleed onto that street and you have to turn it into a pedestrian mall, obviously police officers have to make a decision about is it safe or not. But it would be interesting to know, what people thought about how their transportation moved back and forth, as long as they were being thoughtful and reasonable, about where they were and what they were asking for. You don't see a lot of examples, for instance, if you went to Dallas or to Indianapolis or where they have taxi cabs that pull up to the front door of the building, there is a zone that people usually have to walk a half a mile for. And so, again, reasonable expectations, we got to figure all of that out, and it would be great to get that kind of input from the citizens on issues like that.
They just didn't know where to go.
Sure.
Another thing, too, you mentioned lessons learned. What are some of the lessons learned?
Well, one of them is that right there. The other one is, I think, on the traffic piece. I'm not sure that we have that completely right. One of the things that we knew before this, and that we're all aware of, is the city needs to look better from the minute that somebody hits the airport, or when you come past Williams Boulevard all the way until they leave. One of the other things that I never thought about was the morning after in terms of traffic. Because we thought, we got to get through that night, we got to get the city cleaned up, and everybody's got to get back to work. But one of the things I didn't anticipate was the traffic jam that we were going to have going out east and west out of the city the next morning. So really, if you think about it, the event really doesn't end until at least 12 o'clock the next day. And I don't know that we had any traffic jams, but it was heavier than I really anticipated that it was going to be. So there are probably 150 to 200 of those kinds of little things that hopefully we will pick up and get better at. But all in all, I thought everybody did a pretty good job.
And arrest for any kind of violent crime? I know we had video of people getting bites, and I heard, passionate fans.
Well, my peers around the country ask me all the time, they say, how do y'all handle these big crowds? Because in our big crowds, we'll have a small percentage of people who may have been imbibing. That's not what we have here. People here come to New Orleans and enjoy themselves. So people having skirmishes and bumping up against each other is exactly why we're there. The 8th District reports and my personal observations are that almost all of those ended with no actions really necessary. Break people apart, tell them to take a deep breath and move on with their day. But when people do cause damage or injury to someone else that has to be accountable, we will arrest them. And the arrests were pretty low. When you figure this 10-day period, I think the real measure for us always is not how many people we arrest. It's actually how few people we think we have to arrest. We use summonses about 3 times the rate this year over last year. So put another way, when we do have to hold people accountable, we continue to see using a summons, which is a citation to show up to court, as opposed to being physically arrested. And we did that about 3 times the rate this year than the same 10-period day last year.
Do you know the actual number? I know you said numbers aren't as important to you, but
Summonses were 86.
86 summons?
260 summonses versus 84 summonses last year. So it's a tool. It's a better tool. It gives people a chance to be held accountable without us having to go through the lockup.
And that's, I guess what would you say the summons would be specifically for? Is that just
Probably disorderly conduct, disturbances, public peace disturbances. And remember, this 10-day period is significantly different than the same 10 days last year, because last year it ended with the Sugar Bowl. This year we have 7 more days of activity. So the comparisons aren't really as powerful as you might think. But the fact that we saw so little activity on arrests, I think, is always good news.
On that note, just how much would you compare, I guess, Monday's overall atmosphere on Bourbon Street and everything else, kind of like a Fat Tuesday? I mean, the crowds were equally.
It's interesting you say that. One of the questions I asked the team to keep an eye out for is how would you assess the size of the crowd? And most of our team felt like it was the first weekend Mardi Gras crowd as far as size. I mean, we were out onto Royal Street, we were out onto Dauphine Street, the square was full of people. So when you start watching how it blows out past Bourbon Street, it gives you a better size. So we think it was kind of like a first weekend of Mardi Gras crowd, maybe even a little bigger.
Yeah. And I would just reiterate again, as I said the last time, when people really follow the rules and they help and they think ahead, and people really kind of do what they're supposed to do, it makes everybody else's job easier, and it makes the environment great. And it appeared to me that we had a very, very good crowd that did the best that they could. I know everybody was passionate, and there was a lot of getting into it between LSU and Alabama, but for the most part, I think all of us on both sides of the ball get an A for sportsmanship. And I think everybody that attended the game did a really good job of doing the best they could to be responsible for the things that they were supposed to, which alleviates the pressure and allows these folks to work on, the emergency situation. So we're very thankful for that, and knock on wood, we'll be able to do it again.
Thank you. Only my game was in the dome.
That's very good, very funny.
Chief,